What's going on, Free MMO Station? My name is Skylent, and today we're going to play a new action-packed kung fu fighting type of MMO RPG called Revelation Online.
FreeMMOstation.com.
Alright friends, let's jump into the game of Revelation Online. This is published by My.com. Now this is going to be a Chinese-inspired game. Like, it's very kung fu, and it has a lot of tropes. It's got a lot of cliches from a lot of Eastern MMOs, period. But is it taking the best of all the worlds or the worst? And let's talk about that. Okay, so Revelation Online, I think it's going to be a pretty cool game. I think it's going to be pretty popular. It was pretty hype, but in the end, this particular closed beta event was very unpolished. Okay, so it wasn't fully translated, it had a lot of issues, and so that kind of is going to influence my first impressions, probably many other people's first impressions of the game. However, this is not going to be an example of the final product, which I normally say, you know, in all these alphas and beta tests, but in this one in particular, it seems like they really just needed to test the server systems, you know, just the overall systems and mechanics of the game, you know, make sure everything doesn't just explode. However, you know, they didn't actually have the game polished. It's like half of it is in Russian, and then half of it is in Chinese, and like 1% of it is in English. It was just kind of weird, and you know, there was literal game-breaking bugs where NPCs wouldn't spawn, and then hundreds of players just couldn't continue to play anymore, which is why this video is actually late. Yeah, so this is a post-edit video, so what you're seeing is some cool gameplay, you know, the most best gameplay that I could find personally. Now, it's still a first impression. I didn't get to do a lot of the end game, or any of the end game, because it's a first impression. Please remember that, guys. This is not a full review. It's a first impression. Don't hound me. Okay, so there's a couple of things that I missed that I could not do, considering that I didn't get to do the end game. And I think that this is one of those games that really shines at the end game. It is a dungeon/raiding type of game. Now, I will say leveling seems extremely fast, but it seems very single-player oriented. You're not running around different zones and grinding those out. You're not just running in and out of a single dungeon over and over again, though that will happen eventually, as I can already see, but it's really more like you're kind of attached to a single NPC, and you kind of follow him around to these different areas, and you go on different adventures, and it just seems really story-driven, kind of single-player-ish. It's very weird. Now, other games have done similar things. There are sort of single-player scenarios, but that's also in conjunction with like the actual MMO questing and MMO stuff, like Guild Wars 2. We also have Star Wars, but this game, it's a story-driven adventure, kind of. So, on the website, it focuses on dungeons, raids, and stories. The stories is like your leveling, that's your questing. Now, the dungeons are going to be, from what I've seen, usual. Now, there is really cool mechanics with the bosses, but then we can also talk about that with the raids. So there are going to be raids. Now, I think the raids are going to be extremely fun. Now, there are a couple of games that have really, really fun endgame content like Terra, like World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy XIV. These games have really intense and fun dungeons. Maybe not so much the actual terrain or the environment of the world exactly, or the dungeons, but the actual bosses and those mechanics feel somewhat Dark Soulsian in difficulty, even with a group, maybe like Monster Hunter-ish. You know, there's lots of things to evade, there's lots of things to pay attention to, you're not just zerging down bosses. It's a huge amount of fun in those kind of games, and this is one of those kind of games. But I can say, in this game, there is an unprecedented amount of speed. Okay, there is so much agility with these monsters, with these creatures, and it feels really, really good. Now, I've only seen this level of speed in select Eastern action RPGs, like Dragon Nest and Vindictus, where the monsters are incredibly aggressive a lot of the time. So, I really like that they took that concept, that idea, and made the bosses kind of difficult, very fast, huge skill shots that you need to evade, and just a lot of, you know, I mean, in a game where it's so action-based, I'm really glad that the bosses themselves are also very action-y. It's pretty cool. So yeah, man, big, epic-looking bosses that are just as tough as they look. Absolutely, that's something I want to talk about. Now, I only got to play like 2-3 tutorial bosses. I don't even know, like, if I can consider I played a real boss or not, but still, just from that little tease, it seemed pretty cool. Now, I also want to mention Dark Souls once again because it seems some creatures actually have weak spots. Now, I don't know if that's going to be a prevalent thing, but you can actually, at least for one boss, you were able to target multiple areas of the body. So if that continues on, then we're going to have some really interesting dungeons and especially the endgame raids. That is going to be super cool, especially since most classes are just DPS anyways. You have like one or two, you have one like full healer class, then you have one that's kind of like a half healer class, and overall, like pretty much everything else is like a tank, and then you have 2 DPS that they do DPS a little bit differently. I don't know. The classes overall are kind of confusing to me. I didn't get to play with all of them in my first impressions. I generally don't, but I do like how they're taking a different approach. For instance, you have the sword magician, the sword mage, the sword spell sword thing, whatever. You have a class that's basically what would be normally considered like a mage in another game, and I guess mechanically it's kind of similar, but aesthetically they use swords. They spawn different weapons and they shoot like these sword missiles out of the sky, and that's freaking cool. Now we have the Blade Master, which is definitely a trope we've seen a lot in a lot of other Eastern games, but in this game, I mean, it doesn't disappoint, at least, right? You got your spin to win, you got your dashity dashes, you got all the cool stuff. You have 3 different swords, you stance, and at least it doesn't disappoint. So even though there are cliches in this game, everywhere, in between every mechanic, basically every mechanic is from other games, at least it's done to a nice degree. You know what I'm saying? It's pretty okay. It's pretty okay. And I think that's going to carry over to the player versus player. Yeah, the classes, they all seem pretty cool, but at the same time, they're not too far-fetched, they're not too out there. I think that was definitely a problem in some other MMOs games where the classes were really meant for the raiding. But in this game, all the classes seem a little bit more well-rounded, but they still have their roles, okay? So they're not exactly Guild Wars 2, everybody does everything, and they're still not like, World of Warcraft or maybe like Terra, where there's very specific things that these specific classes can do. No, this one, it's like, because of the action-based combat, because you are, dashing all around, jumping through the air, doing double jumps, because every class at least has some base mobility, there is still some give and take, and you still have roles, but there is also a little bit more flexibility. I will say that, as somebody who plays competitive games, I kind of see the potential in this game, especially since there is so many different PvP modes in this game. Apparently there's going to be aerial combat. I did not get to do that. That sounds cool as hell. It sounds corny, and yes, this is a Wings MMO, if you guys don't know. Lots of Eastern games just have lots of, I don't know, man, for some reason they give you wings, and wings is like the most epic form of epicosity. Yeah, wow, I'm actually looking at a screenshot. It looks like there's some wings that are made of guns and stuff. It's really corny, but hey, if they're going to introduce aerial combat, that sounds cool to me. Now, there's going to be arenas. It is probably almost certainly not going to be to the caliber of Blade and Soul. I just want to say that. But I really think where this game's going to shine is going to be in the castle sieges, which is massive scale conflicts. And then also, there's a couple of different PvP modes, which I think go up to 30 versus 30. So yeah, dude, massive cross-server battles and special PvPvE zones. That sounds awesome, dude. That just sounds awesome. It seems like this game is going to be the most action-packed, sort of big team battle type of MMO. If there's any other MMO that has these sort of like wushu or very action-y based combat, it's almost never above 5v5 or something like that. Or maybe it's like Blade and Soul, where it's completely focused on arena combat. No, this game is going to go for big team battle. I don't think it's going to be like hundreds and hundreds like Guild Wars 2 or Elder Scrolls Online or Dark Age of Camelot. It's not going to be that, but it's still bigger, better. It's big team battle with freaking everybody was kung fu fighting, you know what I'm saying? So that's pretty awesome. I do want to mention that. Okay, now, what are these different classes, guys? You probably want to know. For those who are interested in PvP or the raids, it seems like this game's going to be pretty intense on both of those. Let's talk about the classes. So, we got ourselves a gunslinger, which is your pretty usual, you shoot some stuff from a position, and then you kind of dash to the side, shoot some more things. Yeah, you're the long-range DPS, but you use guns and missiles and stuff. Blade Master is your spin-to-win warrior-esque class. And remember, guys, you have all these different abilities for these classes, but you still have your base movement abilities with the whole wushu system, which is very similar to Blade and Soul. And yeah, you guys get it. Okay, so, yeah, Blade Master already super mobile, and then you add in, what you can do with the levity system, which is what it's called. You have a levity bar. Yeah, you just go ham. So, Blade Master has 3 weapons, and you stance, you do all sorts of crazy ninja stuff. It's basically like you're a ninja with a giant sword. And then we have the Spirit Shaper. This is going to be basically the full support class. And I was really interested in this class because I like summoner classes. Spirit Shaper uses abilities that look like she's summoning something. So I guess it's pretty interesting how that looks aesthetically, but mechanically, it's not like you're actually a minion master. You're not actually micromanaging any summons or anything like that. You just kind of click a target on the ground, and then you summon a gorilla to punch the ground. But that, that's kind of it. So yeah, she's a healer. She reminds me a lot of the Summoner in Blade and Soul. In fact, a lot of these classes kind of do. But anyways, moving on, we have the Vanguard, which is going to be your kind of usual tank, like if you a sword and board warrior or paladin-esque class. So yeah, got a shield, got a mace, kind of mix it up a little bit there. But yeah, he's got, you got your shoulder bashes, you got a lot of CC, your basic kind of tank with a shield kind of person. Now the sword mage, like I already said, pretty unique. I like that she uses weapons, she spawns different swords, and she's kind of like a sieger, like she's kind of like the gunslinger in a way, but a little bit more mobility, and also she can kind of get up close and do a lot of really cool stuff too. So overall, sword mage, I think, is probably one of the most flexible classes, but so is Blade Master. Sword Mage and Blade Master are the two, I think, quote, hardest classes. At least that's according to my stream chat, which is actually all the gameplay you see is taken from my stream at Skylent Games. And also on the website, it lists the highest number of stars for these two classes. Blade Master has some good range and mobility as well. Yeah, Blade Master actually has ranged attacks as well. And then Sword Mage, it's kind of like the reverse of that. Mostly ranged attacks, but then also has a little bit of CQC and a little bit of mobility herself. So these two, if you master these two, you're probably good to go. You could just run through the game. And then we have the Occultist. Occultist is going to be like your usual mage. It's pretty cool. She actually channels, I don't know if deities or gods, but she gets these different wings, man. She spawns different wings, and she looks crazy as hell. And then she just does different types of attacks, and I don't know, man. She just nukes down people. So it's kind of like Gunslinger, I think, in a way, but kind of like a different way, like a different variation of ranged DPS. And I think also she can do a little bit of healing as well. So she's kind of a mix of all the ranged abilities. Yeah, just kind of like a well-rounded ranged DPS / supportive and debuffy kind of class, which is somewhat kind of like Shadow Priest maybe in World of Warcraft. Maybe a little bit. Maybe less nuky, but yeah. Well, the Occultist is going to be more nuky. Now, the game is boasting a social environment, and I have to admit that I don't really feel that. Didn't feel the socialness of the game exactly, because leveling, it's just like a single-player game. It's literally just a single-player game. There's really no difficulty at all. You just kind of spam stuff. You just spam F and space, because for some reason you have to press F to move the dialogue along. Say that 3 times fast. But you press space to complete the quest, so you're just F space, F space, F space. And you just do that for about 3 hours, and then you're just running through the game. You just follow around your little NPC. Anyways, so I'm not a fan of the leveling process. I'm not a fan of the questing. I do appreciate that they're trying to make it, I guess, a little bit more story-driven, a little bit more cinematic in that sense, but it's really immersion breaking in MMOs when you do stuff like that, unless it's a completely separate thing like it is in Guild Wars 2 and like it is in Star Wars. In this, it's just weird. It's, again, a lot of these wushu type of games do that, but it's just weird. It's just really weird. Yeah, so you guys watching the gameplay? You can see for yourself what it looks like as well. I don't want to talk too much about it because I guess some of it can still be polished up, but I want you guys to remember that you see this game, and if you think it doesn't look that great, you have to remember that this is really focused on extremely fast-paced endgame raiding and high-intensity, action-based, massive big team battle PvP as well. So you have intense PvE and PvP, so to a degree, they can only do so much with the graphics. I don't think that they would have been able to pull off Blade and Soul level of graphics potentially, and as you can see, they have little tricks that they play with you too. So if you look in the distance, the animation of creatures and monsters are reduced, even though I have everything on maxed. It looks like a lot of the textures aren't super high resolution either, and a lot of the animations have skipped frames in them as well, which it's noticeable. It definitely is noticeable, way more noticeable than Blade and Soul, but it might look a little bit ugly if you're just doing the leveling in a sense and doing the single player story thing, which is another immersion breaking aspect to the game. But they kind of need to do that. If the game's going to be super intense and super epic, for most machines, they kind of have to cut some corners. So my first impressions was like, wow, this game doesn't look as good as I thought. But then again, I also remembered that I put it on my top 10 best looking MMOs, for a reason. Yeah, I actually have a top 10 there if you want to check that out. Best looking MMOs. I mean, the game in screenshots and the game when you're standing still does look really good. It's just in the movement, and most of the time you are moving in this game. It's a little bit sticky. Sometimes, animations are staggering or they're just stuttering, and you just have to remember that it's this type of game, okay? Like, for instance, if you're playing a game with 100 people PvP, you would expect it to not look as good as Blade and Soul, which is focused on 1v1s. You understand what I'm saying, guys? Anyways, the art style is emulated of, like, Blade and Soul. It's going to be that really big eyeball girls, females, really ridiculous physique on men and women. Maybe you could say it's sexual. Definitely. Actually, you could say it's sexualized. The monsters look really aggressive and just really ridiculous as well. Overall, the game is definitely fantastic. Okay, so if you're looking for something that's super down to earth, then you're gonna want to look at Age of Wushu or maybe its sequel. But this game is a high fantasy game based on mythology of Eastern. I don't want to be insensitive. I don't know if it's Chinese or Japanese or maybe just a mix of all those cool little things. And maybe a little bit of Western, but the game is definitely Eastern-based, Eastern-influenced, and you can see that in its art style as well. A little bit of anime touch here and there, and it's just a little bit fantastic. It's going to be a little bit cartoon. If you guys enjoy that and you like high-intensity action, you're going to have a lot of fun with the game, but right now, it's super rough. Hopefully when it releases, it's going to be fully translated. Hopefully the settings, like if I put it on all max, will look a little bit better, in my opinion. I understand why they have these tricks and these graphical gimmicks for lower end machines. That's totally a cool thing. I know consoles do that all over the place. Dynamic resolution, dynamic frame rates with animations. I understand all those concepts, but if I have a beast machine, I would like to play without those by setting everything to max. So that's something I would really greatly appreciate because this game can look really good, which is why I did put it on a top 10 best looking MMO list. But I do understand why they do what they do. Really excited for those raids. I'm really in the mood, in particular, to play an end game type of game where it's focused on raids and really hard bosses. So we don't really have too many free-to-play games that really focus on that. We have Terra, which is very, very good, but this is a different type of game, very different to Terra. And I think it could pursue that line of gameplay pretty safely because even if it doesn't work out and the raids aren't that great, they can always focus on the PvP, which has a ton of different modes and everything. So yeah, I guess what I could say is, I think this game is a really safe game. Even though in my opinion, it's not Blade and Soul, okay? Blade and Soul is a great game for what it is, okay? It's not Guild Wars 2, it's not WildStar, but at the same time, this is sort of like taking all those, yes, in a way, cliches, it's taking all those concepts from lots of different games, and it's just kind of mashing them together, right? But it's not doing a bad job, exactly. So this is a really safe game. This probably has something for everyone. Hardcore players, casual players with the story, with the role play, potentially. I really couldn't get into it I thought the voice acting was weird. I really hope they do dub it, potentially. I think they will, and of course translating, but maybe I could get into the story if I could actually read what the story was. Because it was very story-driven. Also, there's raiding, the PvP, lots of different kinds of PvP. I just think this game has something for everyone, and even though it's artistically a very Chinese game, I think that it's presented in a comfortable way. It's not like Age of Wushu, which was very uncomfortable for an American playing my first, Chinese game. This game is a little bit more, it's kind of like the World of Warcraft, a little bit of Wushu games, and I think that's probably a good thing. I know it's not what a lot of people were looking for. They were looking for either a Blade and Soul 2, they were looking for maybe like Age of Wushu 2 or something like that. No, it's kind of a bunch of different games altogether, 1.5. So I think that this is a good stepping stone, or maybe this game, because it is free to play and it is an MMO, it's going to be around for a little bit, it can grow and evolve into something really, really great. So my first impressions, guys, I'm going to admit it right here at the end. I did not have a good time. I probably would not recommend it in its current state, but obviously it's going to improve whenever it releases. So it needs to improve. If it doesn't, I still won't recommend it, but I have to admit, it has the potential. Anyways, guys, hopefully I didn't talk in circles too much. Thanks for watching. This was my post-edit first impression of Revelation Online. Wanted to give it a little bit more time than usual. Still, though, it's kind of hard with the, all the issues that it had, but we'll see when it launches if it has those issues. Because I still kind of want to play. I want to get into those raids. I want to do the aerial PvP, man. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. My name is Skylent. You can check me out at Skylent Games. I do YouTube contents over there and stuff. Yeah. Or you can like and subscribe here at Free MMO Station. Always here having fun. Hopefully you do too. And hopefully I'll see you in the next one.